The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL. You are Locked On Broncos Postcast, powered by Mile High Sports, part of Locked On Sports Denver, on the Locked On Podcast Network.
This was a complete and thorough domination from the Denver Broncos. In my opinion, their best win of the season, right? You can point to the Cincinnati game. They took care of business there 28-3. You like the comeback from against the Philadelphia Eagles 21-17. You like the comeback last week against the Giants 33-32. But this is the first time the Denver Broncos have legitimately looked like what could be considered their peak form or close to their peak form, right? A team that can legitimately go out there and try to contend for a championship, as Sean Payton talked about throughout the course of training camp. Today, we saw that form of the Denver Broncos. And look, the Cowboys, I know there was plenty of injuries, specifically on the defensive side of the ball for the Cowboys, but this was the number one ranked offense in the NFL entering into this game. And the Denver Broncos made it seem like that was just simply not the case. So a lot to talk about here tonight. Do me a favor, guys, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. That way you guys never ever miss an episode of your Locked On Broncos postcast. And tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime, guys. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More from our friends over at Gametime here in just a little bit. Why don't we start with the Broncos offense? Because I think that's the major story of the day, right? The Broncos defense is one of the better units in the NFL, in particular in the red zone, and they just did their job. Like, that's the easiest way to put it. Now, I think there's a little bit more emphasis on the job they did today, considering the group they were going up against. I mean, I don't think Jake Ferguson, the tight end, had a reception today for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's one of Dak Prescott's go-to guys throughout the course of games. So the defense checked their boxes, did a good job. Injury updates with Pat Surtain here in a little bit as well. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But they did their job, plain and simple. CD, and George Pickens got their yards and whatnot, but the Broncos did a good job of limiting the Cowboys' scoring opportunities, some self-inflicted wounds from Dak Prescott as well, 2 terrible interceptions for him. But all in all, man, I mean, we got to start and really just dive deep in with the offense. I know we got some questions about PS2. Look, let me get that out of the way then. Sean Payton did not talk about Patrick Surtain, or did not comment rather on Patrick Surtain in his post-game press conference. He left early in the game with an apparent, I believe it was a leg injury. I forget if it was the right or the left leg, but he was in the blue medical tent for a couple of minutes, came back into the game, and then did not play at all in the second half due to a shoulder injury. I'm not quite sure when the shoulder injury occurred. I'm not sure if it was on the same play where the leg injury occurred. I was chatting with our guy, Cody Rourke. There's a chance that, maybe the shoulder was banged up in the first half and, the adrenaline wears off at halftime. And maybe you do realize you're a little bit more banged up than you feel because you kind of calm down a little bit. So a bit of murky gray area in regards to the status of Pat Surtain moving forward, at least from what I've gathered here after the game. But I'm sure Sean Payton will have some more information for the fans and the media alike. Maybe tomorrow, Wednesday, whatever it might be. So we should get some updates on Pat Surtain, but knock on wood, fingers crossed that the reigning defending defensive player of the year, PS2, is A-okay. But on that note as well, I know I wanted to start with the offense, but we're on PS2 and the defense. Now, you got to love how Chris Abrams-Draine stepped up in place of Pat Surtain today. And let's pull up these stats for the Cowboys wide receivers today. George Pickens and CD Lamb had pretty good games, but you were able to keep both of them out of the end zone. I mean, each of these guys, in Pickens and CD, had 7 receptions each for just under 80 yards. George Pickens, 7 for 78, and CD Lamb, 7 for 74. So, the yardage was there for Dallas, but, the Broncos today played a little bit of bend, don't break defense. They gave up some plays over the middles of those guys, but, you saw there in one red zone drive, they tried to target CeeDee Lamb like 2 or 3 plays in a row. Now, there was a couple of flags on Riley Moss. And look, Riley Moss has the hardest job in the NFL, at least at the cornerback. He has the hardest job as a cornerback in the NFL. When you're playing alongside Pat Surtain, and I understand he didn't play in the second half, you are naturally going to get picked on. And some of the statistics have shown us that Riley Moss is better than maybe the eye test seems. I know the flags are probably a major frustration point for the Denver Broncos fans out there today, but, when you have Pat Surtain on the other side, you're going to get a lot of looks. And again, most importantly today, flags or no flags, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb did not get in the end zone. Jake Ferguson did not have a reception in this game, 0 for 0. So all that being done, all that being considered, you got to be happy with how the Broncos defense played today. And Sean Payton in his post-game press conference as well talked about how, they had, I believe, only 2 sacks today for the Denver Broncos. So they didn't, have the sack machine type of game that we've seen from them throughout the course of the season. But they were in Dak Prescott's head. Dak Prescott, was scrambling there a little bit, which is nothing new for Dak. But, the Broncos did a really good job of flustering him. And maybe that didn't come up in the sack numbers and whatnot, but you could very visibly see that Dak Prescott was not the Dak Prescott that we've seen for a majority of this season. And, Sean also in his post-game press conference, it's such a weird duality with Dallas, right? They have the number 1 ranked offense entering into this game, but also the worst defense in the NFL statistically. And Sean Payton said, we want to keep him there. And the Denver Broncos did just that, hanging 44 on them in this big-time victory. Broncos now 6-2, improved to 4-0 at home. Believe that's 9 consecutive wins for Denver here at Empower Field. So the home field advantage is real with this Denver Broncos team, and you just got to be thrilled with the way that they played defensively today. I mean, absolutely thrilled. Again, no Dre Greenlaw out there. He was suspended for this game, stemming from the situation that happened after the game against the Giants, but everybody held their own. Alex Singleton, once again, the leader in the pack in total tackles with 11. Chris Abrams-Drain, who I alluded to, played well in place of Pat Surtain. 9 total tackles for him. Talanoa Hufanga doing his thing with 7. Riley Moss and Brandon Jones with 6 apiece. And so it was really just a complete domination, all facets. You had Marvin Mims on special teams with a nice return. The defense, had Dak Prescott, scrambling out there. And the offense, which we'll get to here in just a moment, was firing on all cylinders outside of that first drive where Bo Nix threw a bad interception. After that point, everything was coming up Broncos in this game offensively. So you got to love to see that, man. And, this is a statement type of win, in my opinion, folks. This is a win. Again, I understand the Cowboys are a middling type of team in the NFL. This wasn't the Joe Burrow-less Bengals, right? This wasn't the rookie sensations with Cam Scatterbo, hope he's okay, gruesome injury today, and Jackson Dart against the Giants. The Cowboys are a respectable opponent, specifically on offense, and the Broncos did a really good job of thoroughly dominating this game in all facets. We talked about the defense. Let's talk about this Denver Broncos offense this afternoon, folks. I mean, they were absolutely on point. Remember that stat about how long it's been since the Denver Broncos had a 100-yard rusher in a single game? Well, they now have another. J.K. Dobbins accomplished that feat earlier this season. He once again did that again today. 15 carries for 111 yards, but he is not the story of this game. Nice game from J.K. Dobbins with a 15 for 111. But it was rookie number 12, R.J. Harvey, with not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns in this game for R.J. Harvey. 2 of them coming on the ground, 1 of them coming in the passing game. This is the R.J. Harvey we were all excited and pumped up and ready to see when they drafted him out of UCF. And it took a little while, right? I think he's had, 1 touchdown leading up, or maybe it was 2, but, he scored, point being, before today's game. But you saw him today just be dynamic. Absolutely dynamic. So shout out to R.J. Harvey. That is what you want to see from the Rook, and gives you a lot of hope moving forward about this 1-2 punch with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey in the backfield. He was sensational today. Real quick, going to the Cowboys, the one good thing that you saw from Dallas on offense today, bad thing for Broncos country, old pal Javonte Williams with a couple of touchdowns. And I don't think there's any bad blood in Broncos country about Javonte Williams. I mean, he hasn't, thrown any shots or fired any shots. Neither have the Broncos. I think it was just a mutual parting of ways. Better for Javonte to go elsewhere. Better for the Broncos to go in a different direction. So, I know Broncos country loves their former Broncos. So nice to see Javonte Williams score a couple of touchdowns in a loss for the opposing team. I think it's a lot. If the Cowboys would have won, probably wouldn't feel that way. But nice to see Javonte get back on his feet as well. But yes, R.J. Harvey with a great game. Troy Franklin with 2 touchdowns today as well. 6 receptions for 89 yards and those 2 scores on 8 targets. He was fired up. He was ready to go. He was locked in. And Sean Payton talked about how they felt like they had some really good opportunities in their game plan to utilize Troy Franklin as an X factor and a playmaker. And they did just that here today.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
The Jets somehow beat the Cincinnati Bengals in a shootout, 39-38. Nobody was expecting a high-scoring game. The Jets somehow managed to come out on top and put 39 points on the board. We'll talk about everything that happened in this game. We'll talk about what it could mean for this franchise going forward. It could be a huge building block for Aaron Glenn as he finally gets his first win as Jets head coach. But unfortunately, we must begin this show on a sad note. And I'm sure you probably know this by the time you're listening to this podcast, but absolutely tragic news coming from the New York Jets today. Nick Mangold, the 3-time All-Pro center, the 7-time Pro Bowl center, the Ring of Honor player for the New York Jets, passed away today at the age of 41 from complications due to kidney disease. It was just a couple of weeks ago that Nick publicly revealed that he was battling this kidney disease and would need a transplant. Unfortunately, news broke about 90 minutes before kickoff. The Jets announced that Mangold passed away at the far too young age of 41. Nick Mangold was a guy who was a great player, a guy who was highly respected, and a guy who was beloved both on the field and off the field. We will talk plenty about Nick Mangold on this podcast in the days and weeks ahead, but I just want to let Nick Mangold's loved ones know that our heart goes out to them from Jets fans everywhere. Truly devastating news. After talking about that news about Nick Mangold, what happens on a football field almost feels irrelevant. But the Jets were able to get their first win of the season today over the Cincinnati Bengals, 39-38. I don't think anybody was expecting this game to be a shootout. I don't think anybody was expecting the Jets to put 39 points on the board. There was a famous New York baseball announcer who frequently said, "You can't predict baseball." Well, this game is a reminder. You also can't predict football because nobody could have seen this coming. Nobody could have seen this performance coming from Justin Fields. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how Justin Fields' career has been a roller coaster. Great games followed by terrible games, followed by great games. You knew what the trends were in his career. But given everything that happened this week, from the criticism he received from all corners, you want to talk about the media, you want to talk about fans, you want to talk about the owner. The owner goes out and criticizes Justin Fields. And you look at the skill position players he had in this game. He did not have Garrett Wilson. He also did not have Josh Reynolds. Not that Josh Reynolds is a great receiver, but he was clearly the second best receiver on this football team. It was difficult to see how Justin Fields was going to be able to do anything in this game, even against the Bengals defense that's really struggled this year. Well, Fields goes out, puts up 39 points on offense, throws for 244 yards, 21 of 32, throws for a touchdown, and also gets a lot of help from the run game. Jets run for 254 yards in this game. I remember heading into this game, I said Jets needed to run for at least 200 to win. The Jets ran for 254 in this game. So a huge offensive performance by the New York Jets. But, you have to give so much credit to Justin Fields. And part of this is Justin Fields probably was not going to start this game if Tyrod Taylor was healthy enough. We talked heading into the game last week as though Tyrod Taylor was going to be the starting quarterback for the New York Jets in this game. And I think he would have been, but Taylor was dealing with a knee injury. And the Jets announced on Saturday that Taylor was not even healthy enough to travel with the team. Aaron Glenn kept the identity of his starting quarterback secret all week. And he kept saying he thought it would be a competitive advantage. And to be honest with you, Fields and Taylor are two different styles of quarterbacks. I think I would game plan for Taylor a little bit different than I game plan for Fields. But I think actually what it was about was they knew Fields was going to have to start, and they knew what a lightning rod of criticism Fields had been all week. And they just didn't want there to be a freak out in the fans and the media. They didn't want to have to create answer questions after Woody Johnson bashed Fields about why Fields was starting. Well, Fields bounced back in a big way in this game. And, he started off slow. I did not love the first quarter Tanner Engstrand called, because that first quarter was the type of game plan you use for a quarterback you have zero confidence in. They really weren't letting Fields throw the ball at all. And I understand why you would enter this game having no confidence in Fields, but you pretty much have two options as a play caller at that point. You can either just kind of give up and not even try plays that have a chance of working, or you can go down swinging. You can hope maybe your quarterback hits a throw and that gets him going. And that's exactly what happened. I think it was the Jets' first touchdown drive where Fields hit a pass to Tyler Johnson that went for 34 yards. It was kind of a play action. He found Johnson wide open over the middle, and that just kind of got him going. And from that point forward, Justin Fields played with confidence. Through Justin Fields' career, you've kind of seen two different quarterbacks. You saw the quarterback you saw in this game. It was also the quarterback you saw week one. The guy who's playing decisive football, guy who's got immense physical ability, the guy who can sometimes just take over. Guy who, if nothing's there, his instinct takes over. He runs, he finds a hole. Sometimes he keeps his eyes down the field. He hits a pass like he did on the 2-point conversion that brought the Jets to within 6 in the fourth quarter. That's the guy who always finds a way to get a job. That's the guy who has talent that's so enticing. Unfortunately, there's also the Justin Fields we've seen the last couple of weeks, the guy who's super hesitant. And because of that hesitation, he misses reads. Because of that hesitation, he misses sacks. I think we're kind of past the point where in the long run, Justin Fields is going to stick with the Jets. But this is the type of game that shows you why the Jets signed him this offseason. It shows the promise. It shows the potential. And for this team, where you've just had so much negativity, where it just felt like nothing could go right. And for a team that, at points this year has not shown a lot of fight. I think that week 2 game against Buffalo, there was not a lot of fight for the Jets in that game. A couple weeks later against Dallas, they did not show a lot of fight in that game. Then there have been other games where it's kind of felt like they were in it, but they just fell a little short. The Tampa Bay game, the Pittsburgh game, the games the last 2 weeks against Denver and Carolina. The Jets were one play away, but the unit that was struggling just couldn't make the play that they needed. This game, it was different. The defense struggled in this one. And, when Cincinnati went up 10-0, when they were up 17-3 early in the first half, you could be forgiven for thinking the game was over. But the offense just kept the Jets in the game. They kept the Jets afloat. And finally, the defense got some stops in the fourth quarter. Defense, which was gashed all day. And this was a lousy defensive performance. Let's not give the defense too much credit. But the defense finally got 2 stops in the fourth quarter. One was to get the Jets the ball back with a chance to win the game. And then the other was to close out the game. The stop they did not get week 1 against Pittsburgh. The stop they did not get week 3 against Tampa Bay. Finally, the Jets got enough. Finally, in the big spot, people came through and made big plays. But the biggest reason the Jets were in the game to begin with was the play of their quarterback, Justin Fields. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Justin Fields is now on his way to success in the NFL in a big way. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Justin Fields has proved he should be the quarterback here next year. I think we're a long way from that. I think what's happened in the weeks leading into this game has not changed. But what I will say is that this team needed a win. This team needed something positive to feel good, something to feel positive about. This fan base needed a break. And this quarterback needed some breathing room. He needed something to go right. And you know what? It's been a rough first 2 months of the season for the New York Jets, but this was a great win. This was the type of win that maybe you can build on.
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with can't-miss offers. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Man, have we been waiting all season for a performance like that, a complete team effort and a total domination.
Fins up. It's the Dolphins squad. Everything Miami Dolphins every week.
The Miami Dolphins were in the middle of everything today in Atlanta. What a performance. Their best of the season, easily 34-10. They defeat the Falcons on a road in a game that we all saw coming after that Browns game, and we were scared heading into this one. As a group, we know as a fan base, and the Dolphins showed nothing last week in Cleveland, did not score an offensive touchdown, and today, the complete opposite, a complete domination, Kyle, of the Atlanta Falcons. I know that shot's celebratory this week. Last week, you were drowning your sorrows. This week, it's raising the roof, and what a performance. We start with the team element, Kyle, and I mean, every statistical category, every facet of the game, offense, defense, special teams. This Miami Dolphins team got off the plane on a mission in the ATL, and they stuck it to not a great, but a pretty good Atlanta Falcons team on the road that had the number 2 defense in the league and the number 3 run game in the NFL coming in. Miami just wiped the floor with them from start to finish.
Yeah, I think that's the impressive thing for me is obviously off the heels of a game like the one you just played last week in Cleveland. It's kind of look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I? Right? It's the Derek Zoolander scene. Who am I? And this team has some guys with some pride. And whether it was Jordan Brooks, the way that he flew around, whether it was Alec Ingold, whether it was Mike McDaniel, I think for the first time in Mike McDaniel's entire tenure with the Dolphins, they played with a 6th offensive lineman on the field, in part because they had to, because Julian Hill didn't dress, and they elevated Hayden Russi off the practice squad. So you had Greg Dulcich, who took Darren Waller's spot, and Tanner Connor. Those were the only tight ends on the roster. So they go, I know it's the first time this year. I'm pretty sure it's the first time Mike McDaniel in Miami has ever gone with 6 offensive linemen on the field. And we did some adjustments in that regard, but defensively, 213 yards of offense. I know we talked about that in the pre-show as far as a lot of that was in garbage time, right? They had less penalties for less yards. They won time of possession. They won the turnover battle. They were better in the red zone. They made 5 trips into the red zone versus just 2 for Atlanta. A total team, to your point, Grease, victory in this game that off the heels of what you just played, that's what you want to see as you're trying to figure out what you are and who you want to have around, not just for the rest of this year, but as you try to figure out who you're going to be long-term.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase, Z. And I'll tell you this, man, it was like Kyle said, all facets. We'll get to the numbers in a minute. They didn't just win the statistical categories. They dominated them. They made the Falcons look like a peewee team, but it started with the defense and the running game. But really, the defense set the tone. Miami went 3 and out on their first possession. In fact, I jumped the gun and texted you guys in the group, oh, no, here we go again, because -1 yard, incompletion, sack. Boom, there it is, right? All of a sudden, same old Dolphins offense, but that's where it ended right there because the defense came out, held the Falcons to a 3 and out on their first possession, and you could see from the first snap of the game defensively, the Dolphins were playing fast. They were playing downhill. They saw some things on film that they could exploit against this Falcons offense with Michael Penix out and Kirk Cousins in, but even with one of the best backs in the league back there in Bijan Robinson, this Dolphin defense played their best game of the season by far, but they completely dominated this game and set the tone from the start.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the first play, I think it was Chubb's jumping around after the play, showing a lot of energy. And I was like, that's what I want to see. I hope he keeps it. I hope the whole defense. And then they stopped, Bijan, twice in that drive on runs and shut him down. So it was a great 3 and out to start the game. And we went back out, and I believe our next drive on offense, we got points, which is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? And we just kept rolling from there.
And Kyle, I mean, what a performance by Jordan Brooks today, man. One of the best players in the NFL this season, a Pro Bowl level, one of the top tacklers, maybe the top tackler, I think, in the NFL, had 10 tackles today, 7 solo, 3 for a loss, and a sack. And a forced fumble. What a performance by Jordan Brooks today. He was the man out there on that field.
He's pretty consistently been one of the better players on the Dolphins defense on a game in and game out basis, but felt like he found another gear today as far as just how aggressive he was getting downhill into the box. And that's been a challenge at times where he is the coverage guy amongst the 2 linebackers for what he can do on the back end. So you wonder what Kirk Cousins, as a quarterback that doesn't have the same amount of arm strength and not the same amount of mobility, how that maybe fueled into how they chose to play this game. You think about no Drake London on the outside. That was a big loss for Atlanta. That's your comfortably your best wide receiver you remove him from the mix. You really felt like Atlanta kind of offensively played through a straw like Miami did last week against Cleveland, where it was really limited as far as where areas of the field they're trying to push the ball downfield. They're having miscommunications with guys trying to work those routes. So I think that kind of fueled into this game and just kind of helped pour gasoline on the fire for Miami to really play aggressive into the line of scrimmage and have that second level of those guys really getting down into the teeth of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and the other thing, Z, that I was listening to, I always listen to the games with the local broadcast with Jimmy and Joe, who do a tremendous job, Cephalo and Rose, and, all those glory years in the 80s with Marino. But those guys, tremendous job calling the game. And they were talking about, and I'll use a term that we love to use in the NFL, the Falcons are lighting the ass up front. I mean, they're about 290 across that line of scrimmage, and it showed today. The Dolphins had their way on the line of scrimmage. I love the way, though, that Mike used both Achane and Ollie Gordon. They couldn't stop either one. Together, they went well over 100. Achane, I believe, was like 18 for 67, something like that. And then you look at Gordon, and they both had a touchdown in the passing game, but well over 100 yards rushing. They got Jalen Wright involved as well in the run game, gave him different looks, mentioned 6 offensive linemen. They had the 6 offensive linemen going in motion on a couple of plays, just incredibly creative offense, but still smash mouth football, running the football downhill to set up Tua, who we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, the run game was on today from the get-go, which was great to see. I think that one drive where they had 10 runs and 3 passes on their the touchdown drive that they had. I mean, that's great to see. And as a defense, you love that because you get your break, you get to go through your corrections with your coaches longer instead of just 3 and out, and it's like a tennis match, and you never get caught up, you never get your corrections, and then the bottom's going to fall out on you. And that's what we've been talking since day one with this show, and we got our losing streak, was we got to get the offense to keep us off the field defensively so we have a chance.
Yeah, and Kyle, I'm going to get to it. We waited just about 8 minutes, and we ripped them the last couple of weeks. 3 interceptions in each of the last 2 games. You think back to those 2 games that they lost by a total of 4 points. You throw in the New England game with the punt return and then the kick return right after it. This team, you could look at that record. You have to win the games, but very, very close except for that one blowout loss. Came out on fire today. Tua, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 206 yards, 20 of 26, spreading the ball all over the place, almost always off play action. The rollout touchdown pass was unbelievable. Just really good with the ball fakes today. Sold them on the play action all game long. And in 2 career games against the Falcons, he's got 8 touchdowns and no picks. And you think maybe he had some Bama flashbacks playing in that stadium again, but Tua might be, when it's all said and done and the dust settles, this might be the best performance of any quarterback in the league this week.
Yeah, and what I like about it is we talked about the backs and the impact that they had in the passing game. And we found some new ways to kind of manufacture some of those touches that you like to get your playmakers, the touches towards the perimeter or outside the numbers or right on the numbers, but without it being those perimeter screens that it really felt like they spammed at times where guys lined up. Maybe you do a stack formation and the back guy.
That's a great word for it. I love that word.
Takes a step back, and they ran it 6, 7, 8 times a game, right? And you kind of know, okay, it's condensed formation. They're in a stack. Which one of these guys is going to step back and take the screen pass? So now they start running this kind of angle Texas route out of the backfield, and they're releasing Brewers, the center, and he's picking off guys at the numbers near the line of scrimmage. And that was the Ollie Gordon catch and run. 1 catch for 20 yards for him and the touchdown in the passing game. Devon Achane had a touchdown in the passing game, and that was releasing out of the backfield, which looked like it was some kind of, I don't know exactly the concept, looked like mesh traffic maybe was the concept where you're running crosses across the middle. You're trying to create a natural pick for the guy who's running out of the backfield. So love that they got those guys involved in the passing game in ways that were built off of the running game and doing so in a way that allowed you to have high percentage throws, right? It was kind of one of the things that you were hoping to see in the wet weather game last week, and we didn't get a lot of it. Some of it's because the score got away from me so fast, but it goes right back into complementary football. And HN, you mentioned the rushing production, but in 91 yards of total offense, Ollie Gordon has 66 yards of total offense. You had over 150 yards of total offense between those 2 guys. And I really liked the adjustments that they made in that regard. And you just maybe lament a little bit that, hey, where was this a little earlier in the season? Because you wonder what it could look like.